So let's talk about trauma and karmic bonds, okay? And if you see my dog bugging out, look, peeping through the window, she's wilding. She's always wilding. I don't know what to do with her. But I want to talk about karmic bonds and trauma bonds. I saw this quote on Instagram. I see it from time to time, and it says something like, some of you think that you're in spiritual connections, but it's really a trauma bond. And let me just say that I think all connections are spiritual. All connections. Unrequited love, reciprocated love, deep love, surface love, attraction, lust. It's all spiritual to me. Because the universe, that's how we learn through relationships. That's how we learn ourselves. That's how we get to know who we are, by seeing ourselves in the mirror of somebody else, right? That's how we grow. Really, I don't think we could grow without relationships and connections, and sometimes the lack of getting what you want in a relationship causes you to grow and set boundaries and realize what you want and what you don't want. But today in particular, we're talking about trauma bonds. And some people will call this a soul tie. Some religions will call this, a soul tie, karmic bond, karmic partner, spiritual husband. I've seen like all kinds of different terms for this. And there's a lot of different terms for spiritual connections, but I'm specifically talking about the karmic or the trauma bond. So basically, what connects you to this person is your trauma and their trauma. And this kind of bond feels so strong and so intense. I remember having one years back that, when I met this particular person, like I was like so shocked that I felt the way I felt the first time I met this person. Like it had me dizzy. Like, yeah, it can do that too. And, that connection played out. And it was very, very painful. And that's what trauma bonds do. They bring out your wounds. They bring all your deep wounds, all the areas where you feel insecure, where you felt rejected, all the things you don't like about yourself. They bring it all to the surface. Everything that you fear when it comes to a relationship or being judged, trauma bonds will bring it right to the surface and throw it in your face in order to face it. Now, if you don't know any better and you don't know what to do with this kind of connection, you will just keep attracting the same kind of connection or the same kind of relationship over and over. You could do this your whole life. That's why some people end up in abusive relationships like their whole life, or they stay in that same abusive relationship because they don't know how to use it for growth, for self-awareness. When it comes to these kind of connections, whether it's just a connection, whether it's unrequited love, whether it's a mutual reciprocated connection, or whether it's a relationship, she's wildin'. I think she sees a bird or something. But anyway, how you will know that it's a trauma bond, again, is because like it's going to bring up intense fear. Intense fear. And it's gonna feel like a high. Now, like I said, there's different kinds of spiritual connections and different kind of labels, and I don't really love labels, but I do understand that we need them to identify and to be able to resonate. And there's like 4 deer across the street. So now how a trauma bond usually starts off, let's say it's reciprocal. Okay, let's just say that the person that you're with, let's say that you like a person and you're feeling a person, they're feeling you. And it goes really, really fast. Everything happens really quickly. Before you know it, you've moved in. Before you know it, there's mad rules and control. You know, you're afraid they're looking at this person, they're doing this, and maybe they are, maybe they're not. Like everything's moves really fast, or there's lots of warning signs, but there's lots of red flags. And in some cases, like some really deep red flags, like warning signals, do not do this. But there's a feeling that is like you're being pulled towards this person. It's a magnet, you know, like you guys are magnets and you just can't seem to break away. And in these cases, there's obviously a lesson for you to learn. And that is why you're feeling the pull, because something is wanting to be healed. And you are to use that connection or that relationship to figure this out. Because again, God and the universe uses relationships to grow. And sometimes, or actually a lot of times, our relationships affect our whole lives and our careers, and the things that are holding you back, maybe with your finances. The freedom could come from that connection that feels completely uncomfortable. You know, you believing yourself could happen through you being in a connection with somebody that's rejecting you. And if you understand what the connection's about, you can do the healing that needs to take place, and the evolving, the evolution that's wanting to take place. That's why you are drawn towards that person. And also with trauma bonds and karmic connections is things that we didn't get in childhood from our parents, needs that didn't get met. We can attract somebody that's like our father or our mother. You know, if you had an unavailable father, emotional unavailable father, or maybe sometimes your dad was emotionally unavailable and sometimes he wasn't. If you were like me and my father were really tight. Well, first of all, I was adopted, and I knew my birth father till I was like 6, 7 years old, and then he just disappeared. But I was with my adoptive father, who for me is my dad, since I was like 6, 9 months. So, but my dad, we were super tight until I was like 9, 10 years old. You know, we were like best friends. And then when I turned around that age, I started getting mouthy and trying to find myself, and hit puberty and all these things that were happening. Plus my mother was sick, and me and my dad just sort of just shut down on me. And so, couple years later, my brother, who was like my best friend, he was 7 years old. He was 7 years older than me. He left and he didn't come back. And so for me, it was like around the same time, the men that I knew, the way that I knew how to relate to men kind of shut down or left. And so I began to attract people that were emotionally unavailable. And I was very drawn to people that were wishy-washy or did the push-pull thing, you know. So, you know, trauma bonds was the thing for me. You know, that's the kind of man that I was attracted to. And you really think that this person's supposed to be for you because you feel these feelings. But the physical part, your physical reality just doesn't match up with what you're feeling. So anyway, the way you know it's a karmic bond and a trauma bond is because after the feelings calm down, if it's a reciprocated connection, everything that brings you trauma or that's brought you trauma in the past is brought up and it stays that way. And you just keep going over the same cycle and over the same cycle and over the same cycle. And ultimately, that bond, usually that bond you outgrow if you're growing, if you're evolving. Sometimes, very rarely, does that person also evolve. It can happen. It has happened. It's just not something that happens every day. And you won't even know if that person's meant to match your energy or your growth until you've grown and felt like it wasn't working anyway. So, but again, I'm trying to think. So all your insecurities, if you have insecurities about your race, if you're black and you have insecurities, about being black, you could manifest a trauma bond or a connection with a white man who might reject you or in some way not be completely emotionally available to you, so that you can take a look at, is it serving you to have these insecurities? Is it time to outgrow them and to really step into your full self? You know what I mean? And if you're heavy, you could attract somebody who, if you're overweight, if that happens to be one of your insecurities, you could attract somebody who doesn't like thicker or heavier girls, and just so you can be so bugged out that you learn how to start loving and accepting yourself right now. If you have a fear of being cheated on, if you have a fear of being rejected, if you have a fear of not being pretty enough, whatever your craziest fears are about yourself, the trauma bond will show you that in the mirror of the connection. And, some of these signs of a trauma bond are also signs of other connections. So it's not like a black and white thing. But how you will know that it's a lower level connection, that it's one that might not last, or one that could be a smokescreen for other things going on with you, that it might be just based off of loneliness or desperation, or unhealed emotions left over from other relationships, is that it really shines a light on your insecurities. And it, well, not only does it do that, because all connections do that, but what am I trying to say here? It's like, even if you're healing in the connection, you're still brought back to that place. It's not, the connection itself isn't moving. You might be growing, but the connection itself isn't growing. Or it just keeps trying to take you back to that place that you've healed from, or that you're growing from. Or you feel constant anxiety, constant trauma. There's drama constantly, like tension constantly. You're constantly trying to figure out how to become a better person in order to make it work. You're constantly trying to get the approval of this person somehow. You're trying to manipulate them. And it might not be conscious manipulation. It could be, because a lot of us manipulate and we don't even know we're doing it, because that's just how we grew up, learning how to love and how to receive love, by manipulating or doing things for people pleasing, right? Another way that you might another sign of it being a trauma bond is that you can't be yourself. Like, being yourself isn't you're not celebrated for being yourself. You feel like, for example, you're not a Susie homemaker type of person, but in this relationship or in this connection, that's the kind of person they want. They want somebody that cooks, cleans, stays home, everything that you're really not. And no matter how hard you try to be that person, it's just not you. But that's what this person wants. Like, and you just keep trying to be that person, although it's not making you happy. You're people pleasing, right? Or you're not living your values to try to please that person. You're disrespecting yourself in order to please that person. You're not living in your authenticity. You're changing things for this person and not for yourself. Those are other signs. I mean, I could go on and on about this, and I'm going to do another video about this because I want to break down unrequited love. Connections where there's really not a lot of anything coming back to you from the other side. Or maybe they just want sex and you want more. We're going to break that all down. So that's all I have for you now, and I will talk to you soon.